Good evening. I'm glad you're all here tonight. This is the Daniel series, just as it was in the days of Noah. And we have a special guest speaker tonight, Allan Aguirre, a very, very good friend of mine. We've known each other for over 35 years. Long time, long time. But like every week, I like to start out with the scripture, which defines me and my wife and what the branch, a Forerunner Ministry, is all about. Luke 1:17 says, "It is he who will go as a forerunner before him in the spirit and the power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children, the disobedient to the attitude of the righteous, so as to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." I believe that verse not only identifies what the prophetic call is on his saints in these end times. It's not only the Maranatha call, but it's the call to obedience, it's the call to Torah. And I am so learning so much more about it. When he spoke that to me in 1983, it's taken all this time to evolve in my heart and spirit, and it's still evolving. So I'm very excited about what's going on. So with that in mind, we're in Daniel chapter 10. And it's everything cosmic. It's all the cosmic realities. And last week, all we did was the preliminary observations, looking at chapter 10, where Gabriel comes. This is the 7th time now. And at this time, it says when he received this vision, he was probably about 85 years old. This is Daniel. And why this is so important is because we read in chapter 7 that the Son of Man was riding on the clouds and he met the Ancient of Days. And the Ancient of Days gave him all of the authority and kingdom to rule. That is the center of all of Scripture. It's the place where Yeshua, Yehovah, takes all authority. And it was the vision that he saw from, we'll call them created beings, angels, whatever you want to call them, but when he was in the throne room of heaven. And it's interesting because what is established in the book of Daniel is the precise numerology and the prophetic preciseness of not only his first coming and his second coming, but there's something more behind that. And it shows very clearly by every time he was visited by Gabriel that he was coming to destroy the works of the enemy. Number one, he was going to take back creation, yes, and redeem mankind. But the primary goal, when you look at Daniel, is he's letting the sin of mankind play out, but he's also allowing the sinfulness of the created beings that fell away, that rebelled against him. He's letting their influence on mankind come to a full, and he's going to destroy them all. So with that in mind, I gave you your notes. You read ahead, Daniel chapter 10, it starts out, and then you'll see that portion where Gabriel comes to him the moment he started praying, and he went to deal with the Prince of Persia, which Allan will explain about. But the reality is that he said, Michael, the Prince of Israel, had to go and defend him. It's a cosmic war. And this is something that's not taught in the church. Many people do not even have a clue what demons are or what Genesis 6 is all about. In fact, mainline Christianity rejects it. They reject Daniel because it's too precise. They said, that couldn't happen. He couldn't be that precise. And he's very precise. That's why Jesus said, I'm not going to tell you anymore. You go back and read the book of Daniel. So with that, I'm going to put it on speaker view, and Allan is going to take it from here. There you go, buddy. Allan Aguirre, songwriter. He's written, I hope he tells us about the books that he's written, because you guys got to get these if you don't have them. And he's very prophetic. God has gifted him. He has that apostolic calling on his life, and he's an incredible teacher. I love his teaching. So, Allan, I love you. Get going, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, I've known Lenny and Linda. I think we met them in '86 or '87. It was right after our daughter was born, and we accidentally found their church, Burbank Vineyard. That's another story, but it was quite the little accidental. Um, yeah, but it's good. Here we are. Um, there is so much to unpack about this. I will start with this. I wasn't sure how to start this, but in 1986, and I know it was 1986 because I started using Hebrew names and phrases in my songwriting in 1986 because it was reflecting what the Lord was telling me, and he told me two things in 1986. One, the Holy Spirit started revealing our need to observe Torah, to keep the commandments, and as usual, and I mentioned that little snippet in this book. This is called The Feast Unlocked, the first book I wrote. I think this will sell for the rest of my life. And I mentioned in the intro to this how most of us come to this understanding through the keeping of the Sabbath, Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, and diet. And so in 1986, the Holy Spirit started revealing to me our need as believers to keep his Sabbath and how we weren't, and we were going to get spanked for it. The other thing the Holy Spirit told me in 1986 was to read Genesis 6 and to understand it. Well, this is pre. I'm an old punk rocker from Los Angeles. I'm not an academic. I don't have a divinity in nothing except maybe piercings and spiky hair. Um, I'm not that guy, and it's pre-internet, and I'm not an academic, so it was quite the adventure to figure out Genesis 6 without the internet and to understand it. And of course, that's going to take you to Enoch. It's going to take you to Jubilees. It's going to take you to Joshua. But then when it started taking me to the cosmic element of it, extraterrestrial life, dimensional realms, things of that nature, it got a little scary. I actually, I don't do anything half-ass. I'm 1,000 miles per hour. I'm all in. And it got to the point where I thought I had become compromised because of what I was learning, what I was understanding, what I was seeing. And you know, we're told by the minimal talent and the minimal Mina believers that if it's not in the Bible, if it's not in the Bible, if it's not in the Catholic compilation of 66 books, it can't be God. That's not true. And so it was hard pressed because there's no internet and I had no one, and it would be years, decades before I would find others that were actually on the same. It's called quantum. You punch a hole in the sky. Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, David Flynn, those guys were doing it too, but we wouldn't find each other or we wouldn't know about each other for a while. And these guys are smarter than I am, and they have better resources than I am. But there is so much involved with this subject matter um, that I want to start with a basic premise here out of John 8. Jesus is teaching in the temple to a large audience of everyday people, scribes and Pharisees, and many of the people began to believe in him. The statement is made that they, the people, Israel, are the offspring of Abraham, to which Jesus replies, I know that you are offspring of Abraham, yet you seek to kill me because my word finds no place in you. I speak of what I have seen with my father, and you do what you have heard from your father. And they answered him, Abraham is our father. And Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works. In other words, if you were actually Abraham's children, I would be able to see it. Other people would be able to see it because you would be doing the works that the children of Abraham would do. Abraham, so it says here, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You are doing the works your father did. And they said to him, we have one father, even God. You got to understand, this is to the quick. This is really piercing their hearts because Israel's identity as a people then and now is that they are the chosen of God, that they are Abraham's children. And Jesus is doing this with them. He's playing them. He's playing with them. And Jesus said to them, if God were your father, okay, now we've come to it. If God were your father, you would love me, for I came from God and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. In 1 John 3, it says, the devil has been sinning from the beginning. Do not be surprised, brothers, that the world hates you. And then in Luke, Jesus says, I saw Satan, the ruler of this world, John 16:11, fall like lightning from heaven. For you to absolutely understand what it is Genesis 6 implies, you have to understand the backstory. You have to understand the cosmic element, like Lenny was saying. He used the word cosmic. You have to understand the spiritual piece that's driving the narrative. So the majority of us as Christians believe that Lucifer, son of the morning star, the musician in heaven, decided one day that he wanted to be the Most High, that he wanted to be in charge. And there was a revolt, there was a coup d'etat, and he convinced a third of the angels to side with him against God. A good example of that would be the rebellion of Korah, which is probably why I speak about the rebellion of Korah so much, because it's a good example of what happened in heaven in the here and now. You know, you have a ruling authority, Moses, and then you have this insurgents with the Levites, 250 plus. I mean, there's close to 300 people, possibly. We know there's at least 250 Levites, let alone Korah and his cohorts, that are actually trying to overthrow Moses because they really believe that they're doing the right thing based on their perspective of the situation. Problem is they lacked the spiritual authority, the discernment that comes with spiritual authority, because if they had the spiritual authority discernment piece, they never would have done what they did. So Lucifer convinced a third of the angels that he should be in charge. He wants to be higher than the Most High, and he's cast out of heaven, and he's struck down. So there's that piece. Lucifer is struck down from heaven with a third of the angels. And he is, right, like lightning. He fell like lightning from heaven, Jesus says in Luke 10:18, to Terra, to this planet, to our earth, to this world. Because apparently, when you're a son of God at that level, because Lucifer is one of the sons of God, so is Jesus. That's why he has freedom, as we see in Psalms, as we see in Job. He has access to the assembly of the sons of God because he's one of them. He's one of the princes, and that's plural. So there are other princes. And since he has access, and since apparently when you're one of those guys, you have worlds. But so anyway, this was his domain. This was his planet. We don't know how long the rebellion took. We don't know how long the war in heaven took. And we don't know how much time elapsed between Lucifer being shut down like lightning and Genesis 1:2. Why 1:2 instead of 1:1? Well, here's why. Every ancient civilization has 2 or 3 or 4 things in common. One, they all speak of a cosmic war that occurred with flying machines and nuclear weaponry. The most famous is India's account of this. Every ancient civilization has a deluge, a flood, a global flood. And every ancient civilization speaks of gods that not only lived on the earth, but ruled over the earth, dominated it, and were like gods to humankind, to Terrans, to us. Well, so there's this war in heaven. It's spoken now. See, in Revelation, it speaks of it. I think it's Revelation 12. It talks about this war. We don't know if it's talking about a war that's coming. It sounds like it's talking about a past world war, cosmic war, because it talks about Lucifer being cast down. We're not sure, but we do believe, or some of us believe, that there was an actual war in heaven, and we don't know how much time elapsed. So I'll just cut to the chase and just say what it is that some of us believe. In this war, just like any other thing, they adapted to the situation, and Lucifer adapted to the situation and used portals and stargates and wormholes to open up dimensions to bring in other dimensional beings or species into our time-space continuum to assist them with this battle against God. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. If you haven't, it might be a little frightening. And I'm going to try and give you some reasons why that's potentially possible. One of the reasons why that's potentially possible is because the Tower of Babel is the name Babel means gateway to the gods, to the start. It's a portal. It's the Tower of Babel was a stargate, a portal. Why is Nimrod working with Nephilim or Watcher technology to create a portal, a stargate, a transport system to what? Other dimensions, other what? Times, what? So we have these little clues that tell us that was in play. Plus, everything does that. We do it, animals do it, even microscopic things do it. They adapt and they overcome. So there's that. Again, we don't know how much time was here on this planet after he was cast down here. We think people believe that because of the monoliths, we can't ignore the fact that there are monoliths that are extremely similar to themselves, to each other, all over this planet. Underground, above ground, on the ocean floor, even on Mars. And so we believe that it's because, well, I keep saying we believe, I'm sorry, but so I say we believe because I believe this. It's believed that these monoliths exist because they were trying to recreate here on Earth their a civilization, a civilization that they had somewhere or sometime or in some dimension, and they were trying to recreate it here. We're talking pyramids, we're talking all that stuff. Then we see in Genesis 1 that the earth is formless and void. Or no, in the beginning, God made, in the beginning, and then we immediately jump to the earth is formless and void, and Elohim is hovering over the waters. We believe it's called the gap theory. We believe that that's the first flood that happened and that destroyed this, what we call a pre-Adamite society. The reason why I read what I read in John 8 is because we have to understand this character and the nature of the being of this character. He's a liar. He is untruth incarnate. Jesus said that when he lies, he's lying from his own character. Let me read that again. He was a murderer from the beginning. So there's that. He's a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he's a liar and the father of lies. You have to understand exactly who it is or what it is that we're dealing with. When you understand that, when you can grasp the concept of pure evil, pure antichrist, anti-anointed, anti-God that Lucifer is, it's a little bit easier to maybe understand what it is that I'm saying. This being hates God so much for, we don't know why he decided he wanted to be the Most High, but then being cast down from his lofty place, he lost some sort of authority. He lost something in that fall. And he's been trying to recreate what he's lost here in this temporal realm. So he's limited. That makes him angry. But the thing that makes him angry the most, I believe, and there's a reason why I believe it, and that's what we're going to talk about, is because if the gap theory is true, then God destroyed or allowed a destruction for that pre-Adamite society to occur. So then he got smacked again. But then God recreates the earth, the Garden of Eden, and it's beautiful and it's perfect. C.S. Lewis really understood this. You see it in the creation of Narnia, in the first book of the Chronicles of Narnia, the Magician's Nephew, chronologically the first book, the Magician's Nephew, with Aslan singing creation into being. We see hints of it again from Lewis in the space trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, Paralandra. He understood this stuff. Well, so you have this beautiful creation, right? So do you understand? He rebels, he gets smacked down, he wars against God. There's a war. Maybe and then we think that maybe they were recreating a civilization here, what he might have lost. That gets wiped out if the gap theory is true. And then what does God do next? He starts creating our reality. Well, the reality we had prior to the fall, right? So that's why I think he's so angry and why he's so upset. One, God interfered with his domain. He's the prince of this world. He's the God of this earth. Jesus knows this. Jesus talked to him about that. When Lucifer said, "This all the kingdoms of the world are mine and mine to give to whomever," Jesus did not contest that. Did he? No, he did not. So God creates then this beautiful garden. And then what does he do? Talk about adding insult to injury. He then creates a new being, a perfect demigod being, because Adam was not human like you and I. He was a spiritual entity. He was an eternal being. He wasn't entirely human like you and I. Adam was not human like you and I. So, by placing Adam in the center of the garden and giving him dominion over the earth, he was giving this new being that he wanted to share himself with, Adam, he gave him dominion over Lucifer's planet. That's not going to go over very well at all, not even a little bit. And not only does he have dominion over the earth, he has dominion over all the animals of this earth. And he's perfect, without sin, and he's got God's favor. Adam has what Lucifer wanted. It's a cruel cosmic joke, man. Lucifer doesn't get what he wants. God creates a new being and gives what Lucifer wanted to him on his own turf, in his own house, in his own backyard. God knows what he's doing. He's inciting this being. Yeah. And so he has to infiltrate, divide and conquer. And that's what he does. He lies, he seduces. The word seduce does come up in some translations. He seduces Eve. Adam's right there. And he creates the wedge needed between man and God, sin, with untruth, grandiose tales of what Lucifer wanted. You'll know, you'll be like God. It's so right. I mean, this is how elemental the narrative is. They fall, and an element is now introduced into the narrative, into our time-space continuum, into our realm. Lucifer and sin, deception, right? Adam, where are you? Oh, I hid from you because I was naked. Who told you were naked? Right? Shame. I mean, here we go. And then we have the murder with Cain and Abel. See, so it begins. And not long after, during the days of Jared, 200 watchers, 200 sentinels that are basically placed to protect our airspace, right? If this is, I'm not a flat earther. So if this is our world, these sentinels, these 200 watcher sentinels were designed or placed to watch and protect our airspace. From what? I believe it's from the stuff that Lucifer was already dabbling with pre-Adamite society. Portals, gateways, stargates, bringing in other dimensional realms, other species, other things into our existence, into our time-space continuum, into our dimensional realm. Here's why it's such an infraction. If you know anything about the Watchers, if you've read anything about Enoch, they taught us things we were never supposed to know. Apparently, Enoch was considered the righteous scribe because he was the only one that could read and write. Because we weren't supposed to be able to read and write. Because when Enoch describes the various things these Watchers taught us, culture, music, makeup, how to work with herbs, metals, metal, metal, right? Metals, how to ore, silver, gold, bronze, copper, how to work those systems, how to work the earth, how to work makeup and art and music and culture, how to read the stars, how to read the signs in the lightning flashes, magic with a K, astronomy, astrology, on and on and on and on, how to heal, how to use the earth and herb and plants, and how to do what we were taught all this by them. We were not supposed to know that stuff. But the biggest infraction, and the reason why I say it's the biggest, because Azalel, the Watcher named Azalel, was the first to be captured and thrown to the bottomless pit. And he's also when you take the scapegoat and it's sent off to Azalel. His biggest infraction, that was the biggest infraction, wasn't makeup, wasn't music, but he taught man how to make weapons and how to war. We were never supposed to know these things. So Genesis 6 tells us that 200 watchers, sons of God, they're not archangels, they're above archangels. They're sons of God, like Jesus, like Lucifer, that were sentinels, that had a predetermined role. Sentinels, watchers, that's why they're called watchers, I believe, to protect us. So the biggest infringement they can do is to leave their post, their proper sphere, as Jude says, and decided when they realized how hot and awesome our women are or were, because, right, Sarah, she was what, 80 years old and hot, right? Decided they wanted to procreate. They wanted to make babies. They wanted to procreate. The desire to procreate was more important than keeping to their proper sphere and obeying God. They traded in their fear of God so that they could procreate. Hebrew says there was a joint fitting, and it literally does mean that. Not to be vulgar, but that's what it means. The woman's vagina is a portal. The birth canal, the vagina, the birth canal, it is a portal. You can take a spiritual entity, run it through the woman's birthing canal, uterus, and it comes out a son of Adam, a human, a Terran. Based on the biblical narrative, we were all spiritual entities before we came to this planet. And in order for us to make that transition from spirit to flesh, we had to go through the woman's uteral birth canal. The same thing happened to Jesus. And that is why we have the situation that we have with the Watchers, why we have the situation we have with incubus, if you know what that is. That's why we have those type of situations. There is something about the human portal of the woman's reproductive organs and that whole system they really want access to. Without saying anything that'll get us banned with our new censor rulers, is it any surprise that what is being injected into people right now is actually affecting those areas of people's bodies? 1 + 1 always equals 2. So the Watchers they want to procreate, and they create what are known as the Nephilim, the giants, men of old and renown. According to Enoch, they're 600 cubits. The sacred cubit is, I think, a little over 2 feet. That makes them like 600 plus feet tall, the original Nephilim. That's like a 6-story building. Isn't that something like that? 10 times 6 is 60. No, it's taller than that. It's tall. It's like big tall. It's like bad tall. And so they're roaming the earth for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and they're depleting the planet of its resources. They're devouring humans because they're running out of food. Men have become they become basically the warlords. I mean, you've seen the old stories, the Titans, Zeus, all that stuff. You know, both Greeks and Romans and other cultures speak of them. And we're basically, what are we going to do? And we're trying to provide for them. Well, that's running out. They're running out of time there. And then guess what starts happening? The Nephilim, the offspring, they're not immortals. They're half mortal. They're dying. They start to die off. And so the Watchers, their whole reason for disobeying God is to procreate. And now their children are dying. But in the meantime, since they're here for such a long time, there is a mixture going on with humans that are, right? Obviously, that's how we got the Nephilim. But now the Nephilim themselves are interbreeding with humans and with themselves. So we've got quite the mess. We've got giants that are 50% human and 50% angelic. And now we've got bastards from that. And I think Enoch actually uses the word bastards. And so now we've got varying levels of mixed blood and DNA, as well as levels of height, as well as levels of supernatural ability. And the planet is in absolute chaos. And God is, it depends, I think it's a Jubilees. The angels go, hey, Are you seeing what's going on down here? It's quite the mess. And so he finds a man whose DNA is intact in his generation, and his name is Noah. His DNA is intact, and apparently so are his 3 children, his 3 boys. And they're told to build an ark because I'm going to wipe out the planet. Why? Well, biblically, you're not supposed to mix seeds, animals like the mule, or DNA. Everything after its own kind. This is a building block of our reality. One of the things the Watchers started doing and to try and find sustainability, longevity for their children was they started experimenting with DNA to see if they could come up with a way to keep their offspring from dying. And they started experimenting with the DNA of human, plants, and animal. Doing so perverted God's creation at the DNA level. That's unacceptable. Do you see why this is going to happen all over again? You can't mess with DNA. And when you do, it's because outside sources or outside technology or outside influences or an outside agenda is at play, which now perverts the narrative. And that upsets God. So, because the planet was perverted at the DNA level, he wiped it out with a flood. But prior to that, Enoch was sent to them, to the Watchers, to be given their judgment, which was they were going to be locked in the bottomless pit. They were going to be locked in Sheol Hades. But before that, they were going to watch their offspring die. And so God disembodies the Nephilim. And the spirits of the Nephilim are free to roam the earth. Those are demons. Well, after the flood, so here's what happens. Right before God closes the hatch on the ark, he selects 3 women for Noah's 3 sons. We don't have any account of their DNA. And so at the end of the flood, Noah gets drunk. Ham doesn't take care of it responsibly or respectfully. And it's not Ham that God curses, but it's Ham's son, Canaan. He's the one that Noah curses. And so when they left the ark, Ham and Canaan went back to where? They went back to the base of Mount Hermon, not Herman. That's an inside joke with Lenny. They went back to the base of Mount Hermon. It's known as Sidonia. It's known as Phoenicia. It's known as the beginning of all this mess. And it is suggested that they were able to rejuvenate Nephilim DNA with the cuneiform tablets because, well, they come back. They're found on the earth. More than 8 tribes of Nephilim are found in the narrative in the land of Canaan after the flood. Moses hunts them. Moses kills them. Joshua, Caleb. Remember that? The land of Canaan is riddled with the demonic strain of humanity on the earth, the Nephilim. That's why Israel is mandated after 400 years of letting the Nephilim mature in their sin and in their iniquity. Remember, that's what Abraham was told. Then Israel is unleashed on them to annihilate them because you can't have this strain on the earth. And then, of course, there's also the idea that they're on earth to thwart the line of Messiah. That doesn't happen. And then it's suggested that they're they're going to be one of the things we combat as believers. So, Nimrod it's suggested that Nimrod, right? He began to become Gabor. He started to transform and metamorphose into a Nephilim. And it's suggested in Jubilees, I believe, Jubilees or Joshua, that it's because he put on the actual garments of Adam and Eve that God made in the garden, and that had the properties that started transforming his DNA. And so then he started tapping into that, which is why he was building this portal, the starting. So the Nimrod character is all throughout history. It's like the Jesus character, but the devil or Lucifer's version of the Jesus character. It's a man that's not entirely human, that's Luciferian, and then he dies and he comes back to life. We've got Nimrod, Baal, Apollyon, Tammuz, Gilgamesh might be the latest incarnation. There's that stream of narrative. So what does this have to do with us? Well, it has a lot to do with us, and here's why. So Paul talks about it. He mentions, Jude talks about it, and Paul talks about it, how this is why women need to wear a head covering. It's a spiritual head covering. If you're a woman that isn't married, doesn't have a father or a pastoral leader, a spiritual leader, you need to have your head covered with a piece of cloth. That's the teaching. That's New Testament teaching. And he says it's because it's to protect you from the angels. So my daughter is going to be getting married next month. When her husband left her, I became her covering again because I'm her father. There's women out there that don't have husbands or fathers that might have a pastor that could be their spiritual covering. If you have neither, you need to be wearing a veil, a headpiece, not a veil, but a headpiece to protect you from the angels. Paul taught us that. And if you're a Gentile Christian, you listen to Paul, you might not be doing that. There's a reason to do that. The angels, Paul knows about it. Peter talks about them. Here's why it's important. They're in play. There are hybrids, that's what we call them here on Earth. I live in Utah. This is one of the largest concentrations of this in the United States of America. Steve Quayle says he has seen giants in stasis here in Utah. He has spoken with First Nations leaders who are actively still engaged with opening portals and stargates. And that's how they got here. They came through the portals and stargates, the giants, and then didn't go well for them because they show up hungry apparently. And they are carnivores, they're cannibalistic. Double road teeth, red hair, giants. Cherokee talked about them. They've been seen. They've been all over. They're all over they show up all over the U.S. Large concentration here around the Four Corners and that whole Wasatch Mountain, Rocky Mountain region. I'm thinking that's why I'm here. Not quite sure what that looks like or how the dots connect, but it's pretty freaking weird, right? I think so. God reveals this to me in 1986, and I don't know anything about this place for another 9 years. And then 18 years later, here I am. I think it's very strange. What a coincidence. Here's why it's important. They're coming back. The bottomless pit is opened. They're released. I think we have been working with Watcher Tech for over 100 years. UFOs and alien life and extraterrestrial are involved. They do play a role in this. Remember, Antichrist shows up with his sign and with his mighty ones in the sky with signs and wonders. But then that's also why God told me to. That's also why God started revealing Torah to me at the same time. That's also why God spent 40 years in the desert preparing Israel to walk into their prophetic inheritance that was occupied and riddled with Nephilim, the demonic strain of humanity. The land of Canaan was their nest, their hive. And in order for Israel to be able to go into that place, withstand them, war against them, not be influenced or tainted by them or worship like them or intermarry with them. All these things they failed at, obviously, was by learning who God was, what God expected from them, and how to properly worship him in spirit and truth by keeping his commandments. Something as simple as eating clean, wearing tassels, and keeping his Sabbaths, especially keeping his Sabbaths, plural. He said so. Not just his weekly, but his yearly ones too. Leviticus 23 is God's weapon of choice for us against this cosmic enemy. I say cosmic because if you don't understand Genesis 6, you will not be able to do or understand and then do, because you have to understand to do. If you don't understand Genesis 6, you will not be able to understand, do, or accomplish Ephesians 6. I guarantee you. I promise you that. You're supposed to be taking on cosmic powers of darkness, Ephesians 6 says. A lot of you still have a problem turning the lights off when you leave the room. Yet somehow you're going to be able to take on demonic, cosmic ruling powers of darkness. See what I'm saying? Don't be deceived. God's not mocked. You need to actually know what it is that you signed up for. Israel didn't know they were signing up for becoming a warring people. They were a shepherding people. I know you didn't know this either. None of us did. Nobody told us that when we got saved, when we came to Messiah, that we were going to have to figure out, learn, boot camp, how to be a warring people, because we were going to be thrusted literally that night into a cosmic war of spiritual dimensions. No one warned you. I apologize for that. But now you know. Everything that we're talking about, everything. Let me read you something. I wrote this a few years ago regarding this. I think it's one of the best ways to explain it. So I'll explain it to you. And this is how I'll end. I'll end with this. When you understand that our planet was invaded by sons of God are higher than mere angels, the Watchers, who created a subhuman race on Earth, the Nephilim, that wreaked havoc on man and the planet's resources and coexisted with man and taught him everything we were never to know. And then they, the Watchers, start to experiment with genetics and mixing the DNA of human, plant, and animal life in search for a way to bring immortality to their offspring, breaking the most basic of God's commandments in the process, everything after its own kind. Genesis 1:11, verse 12, 21, 24, chapter 6, verse 20, chapter 7, verse 14. I only need two. Those are more than three witnesses there. And perverting all of creation at its DNA level, causing the flood, and through the line of Ham, who returns to the exact geographical location where all of this began, Canaan, at the base of Mount Hermon, and picks up from where they left off pre-flood and rejuvenates Nephilim DNA, bringing back the race and creating hybrids, humans and Nephilim, Nimrod, for example. And then God creates a race of humans of his own, Hebrew, Israel, from two Gentiles, Abram and Sarah, to counter the demonic strain of humanity on the earth that dwell in Canaan, and then has Abraham walk the entire borders of that land. And 400 years later, Joshua leads this race created by God supernaturally, a nation of kings and priests unto God, to enter this promised land that's occupied by this demonic strain of humanity, and to completely and utterly wipe them out, and they don't, with the final offensive move being to send the God-man himself, Jesus, into the mix, and for him to bring the final conflict into reality by creating through and in him a royal priesthood, you and I, to destroy the works of the devil. When you understand that that's how and why all of this has happened, it should completely and totally change your entire perspective of what it is that you think Christianity is all about. And in turn, this should radically change your life in how you approach, serve, and obey Messiah. I can keep going, but I think that's enough, right?
Why don't we open it up for questions? I'm going to stop I'm going to leave the recording on, but I need to stop Facebook if that's okay. All right. And we're going into gallery view. There you go, folks. You can unmute now. Why don't you go ahead and unmute and ask away.
I have a question. Well, if you could, so we have pre-flood, we have before Adam, after Adam, we have after Adam, we have after Abraham, after the flood, all these afters we go through our battle. We still have all these giants, whatever. And there's some of the names for them are the same from one place to another. But what's the names? What are they? Because we have all these different names for them.
I can show you that. All right, they're known. Here's some of the names that show up in the biblical narrative, actually in the scriptures. The Rapha, the Rapha'i, the Anakim, the Amim, the Zamzumim, the Horim, the Amalekim, the Abim or the Avim, either with a B or a V, and the Habim. Those are some of the actual Nephilionic tribes, or that we know of from the Bible.
But are they from one group of and then
they're eventually they're gonna they're all gonna stem from the same kind of, like we all come from Noah, right? In the same way. So not all the Canaanites were giants, but we do know that the giants were mingling among them. They were cross-pollinizing with humans and with each other. So so when it comes to genetics, you know what I'm saying? It's the same way. There's going to be mixture.
Some of them were more earthly, right? And then, earthly. Okay, so we got what you said earlier about
they're all going to have some element
with humans, and then the other ones. There's like all these different ones coming back.
Right. Well, all Nephilim are going to have some percentage of human in them. That's what makes them Nephilim. Don't confuse the Watchers with the Nephilim. The Watchers are sons of God, angelic beings that are in the bottomless pit.
Right.
Their offspring are Nephilim, and they're crossbred.
Mm-hmm. So they're spirits of?
So the original Nephilim before the flood were disembodied. Those are the demons. And there's an account of those demons outnumbering men. And so they petitioned God and said, hey, we need a little help there. So he killed a third of them. But they're still out there. So I mentioned this on one of my shows recently, and that's when you see a demon, if you've ever seen a demon sitting in a human lap. So if it was a spirit of alcohol, a demon of alcohol, they need hosts. They can't feed on their own. They need human hosts. So if it's a spirit of alcohol, it needs a human host to feed. If it's a spirit of sexual immorality and needs a human to feed. If it's a spirit of gluttony and needs a human to feed. So this particular demon, this particular spirit of alcohol, needed a human to feed, and it was sitting on the lap. Have you ever seen the movie Constantine? The body shape or the body form of the demon that Constantine captures in the mirror, it resembled that body type, and it was sitting in the lap of a human who was drunk. It was like passing in and out because of the drunkenness, but it was sitting there just licking the alcohol through the pores, because it was like, you know, licking the face and the neck of the human, because it was feeding, because it needed the human to drink so it could feed off of it.
Mm.
So
If you're casting out something, where do they go? Of a person. I mean,
right.
now,
So it
in what-
says that they're cast out into the waterless regions.
Yeah.
Enoch explains it, and it's even in our canonized Bible too.
The word
You're-
says that.
What was that?
What do you think?
You said the word says that, right? Waterless. Yeah.
Yeah, it talks about it in our regular Bible. It also talks about it in you know, Enoch and Joshua. So there, when I cast a demon out, that demon is sent to like an outer realm thingamajigger. You got you got to remember there's dimensions.
Jesus said that when he's cast out, he will go get 7 more.
Yeah.
So we don't have the knowledge to, I really say where at. It just gives us the fact that
I think it's
they're in a
I think
waterless place.
it's dimensional outskirts.
Right.
It's dimensionally, or whether in the spirit realm or whatever. It's like an outskirts, right?
Well, I hope we have some of God's holy angels taking care of some of these spirits that we're casting out and stuff, because
Right.
wow,
So the last time I interacted with Chuck Pierce, he prayed over my wife and I 3 or 4 times in one sitting during the course of this meeting in Las Vegas for angels. I have always known I need to understand and figure out how to dispatch angels. And I haven't figured that out even a little bit. But we are supposed to be able to work with angels for protection, for covering, for, right, because we're ministering spirits. They're you know, they're the ones that do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Mm.
yeah,
It would
because
be
you know,
beneficial.
when Peter got out of jail and went to the house, the servant thought that was his angel there, and
Mhm.
it sounded like Peter. And she said, "No, it's Peter." She knew the difference between Peter's angel and Peter. Some
Yeah.
of the other guys, people in the house didn't know.
That's pretty cool, huh?
Alan,
Yeah.
you said it right when you said that the key is observing his feasts and keeping his commandments. Because if we do that, we don't allow it. Really, if we love him with our whole heart, we won't allow sin to come out, because they can smell it. They know it.
Yeah.
And,
So
you know, look at the unbeliever. What protection do they got?
oh my
And then
gosh.
you look at the Christians that don't know this stuff and that are flirting with evil. 99% of them are
Yeah.
going around the mountain again and just sin, 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 sin.
So because I keep God's commandments, the scriptures, I don't allow things into my body that are not clean,
Clean.
right? So I don't eat unclean. I eat clean, biblically clean. I don't eat kosher because that's rabbinical, and I don't subscribe to rabbinical stuff. I eat biblical. I eat biblically, so I eat clean. So I don't allow certain foods into my system, you know, or drinks into my system that will make me unclean. I also don't allow other things into my body that would make me, or my DNA, or my metabolism, or my bloodstream unclean. Or I don't put myself in a place where the enemy of my soul, whether it manifests as demons or spiritual entities or humans, to manipulate me.
Hmm.
That's a lot of code going on there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think, because back in the days of Jesus and the disciples, they saw angels. Everybody saw them, and they saw other things too. So do you think there's a day coming when not everybody, but the people of the Lord, those who committed whatever, are going to see these angels like Peter's servants did, and
I
Peter and
don't-
them? it seems like the angels went with them.
Right. I don't think everybody in the biblical narrative, Old or New Testament, saw angels or spirits. I don't think everybody did. I
Was
think
it only a certain time period?
well, no, I think certain people did. And they're based and they saw them not based on a time. So because your question is, do you think a time is coming when we will be able to? No, I don't think it has to do with time. It has
Well,
to
I
do
meant
with
it spiritually. I didn't actually mean because Peter's servant saw the angel, and then the disciples saw.
right. I don't think it
Jesus
has to do with a time or a day. I think it has to do with where you're at
spiritually.
spiritually.
That's
So
what I meant to ask.
here's the proof text. A Roman centurion, a God-fearer, a Gentile that kept the Torah, his prayers and good works became a monument before Father God in the heavenlies. How the freaking hell? That nothing like that is said about the disciples.
No, where's that from?
Acts chapter 10. And because this Gentiles' prayers and good works, and it actually says, I think his good works towards his Jewish poor became a monument up to heaven. And that's why God sent him a Gabriel to send him so that he would go find Peter. Why? So that he could find Messiah. This guy's functioning without Jesus. Yeah, buddy. That's why Jesus says, man, you got Moses and the prophets. You're good to go. That's what Jesus said.
You know,
See,
it's interesting.
so
That's amazing.
contradictory to our Christian theology and doctrine, you know?
Yeah. Only Christians, only we can see it. That's
Well, they're not seeing nothing.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think it's not a matter of, oh, there's a day coming, or no, I think it has to do. What's the difference between you and Peter? The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is in Peter and is in you. Yet Peter's shadow was healing people. So what are you not doing in as far as alignment, right, and proximity for your shadow to heal? Well, I've always said it's two things. One, Peter's Jewish, and two, he understood the Torah. Whether he was obeying it or not prior to Jesus, he understood the Torah. And that's what hinders Christians, I think. I know, because I've been doing this for 40 years. That's what hinders Christians when it comes to charismatica. They don't understand the spiritual realm. So to continue to answer your question, Aspen, more people in the third world are seeing angels and demons and supernatural stuff than here in the U.S.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's because the Western world doesn't believe in supernaturalism. That's only TV and movies.
Well,
Yes.
I believe in them.
Amen. Same here. But I've also
Wait,
seen
Some
them.
of them might. I mean, if people, there's things I don't want to see.
Yeah. My wife actually sees more than I do. She has seen them more than I do. So it's a good tag team. We're a good tag team. She sees them, I go kill them. I'm a demon hunter.
Okay, well, you can kill these when I see them too then.
That's the way it's been. We've been tag teaming like that for quite a long time.
Lenny, sign up. Everybody sign up. I need some.
Yeah. Because I'll discern it, but she'll see it. I don't know if I don't know. Sometimes I guess I'd want to see it, but there's a lot of times where I don't want to see that. You know what I mean?
I don't think you want to see it.
All right.
Sometimes I see it, but a lot, I discern it, then I see it.
Yeah.
It's like, can I give an example? I don't know who else on this right now, so I don't know.
Yeah. One of the things I remember one lady she goes, I saw you in the spirit realm just now. You're like, I was like 8-9 foot tall or something like that. And pure white dreads and stuff like that. They saw, and I was like this crazy warrior guy. And I was like, I don't have a problem with that because in the summer of 1983, I got jumped in the back of a club on Hollywood Boulevard by a bunch of guys, a gang actually. I got jumped. They beat me pretty severely. I had blood on my back from my face. But I had warned them that they had the wrong guy and that if they messed with me, they were messing with the living God. They didn't like that. So anyway, they made a circle I was pinata boy for a couple minutes. And
Hmm.
I go, okay, I warned you. Now the wrath of God has fallen upon you. And I started shondoing them, shondo on all over them. And they literally stopped, and they were looking behind me and above me in absolute fear and ran.
Wow.
Great story.
And I got back to Burbank that night, and I told God, man, I understand why, but if there's any way you could ever avoid that from ever happening to me again, I would really appreciate it. And it hasn't happened again.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. I think it will again though, but it hasn't recently.
Chrissy, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. When you're, I never heard of I think years ago, someone sent me, I think maybe my aunt sent me a link about the Nephilim, and I never really looked into it until we started doing the Daniel series, and I started reading, and I was telling them last week, I'm in the book of Enoch, and I was reading it last night, and I'm
which Enoch are you reading?
I'm doing in the Apocrypha. Where am I at?
There's only one version of Enoch you should be reading. Avoid number 2 and 3.
Well, I don't know which one it is. So I'm reading from this. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, it's not going to let me show. Never mind, it won't let me show you. So I don't know how to take the screensaver off.
Is it the Ethiopian version 1?
It's from the Researcher's Library of Ancient Texts, Volume 1, the Apocrypha.
If it's from the Apocrypha, it's probably number 1 from Ethiopia. Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay, no. So I was, I'm reading it. I'm going, okay, if I wasn't a believer, I would go, this guy was smoking something crazy. It sounds so bizarre.
Yeah.
And when you were just discussing all this, I'm literally taking notes over here, and I'm thinking, okay, I was never, when my husband watches Ancient Aliens and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'm like,
the ancient alien theory is real.
Give me a friggin' break.
It's all true.
But that's the thing, right? So I'm going, whatever. It doesn't make any sense. And then I'm listening to you and I'm going, what? I know I'm not discounting what you're saying. I'm just
I understand.
The brain is going, I don't know if I can handle this. I believe that there are demonic presences. I believe that there are spirits out there. I know, because I don't know if they're demonic, but I've experienced, and Uncle Ron and Aunt Deanna came here last year and literally started praying around our property because we've had I've experienced quite a few things here.
Where do you live?
Eagle Rock.
Where?
I don't know if you remember where Lenny and Linda used to live when Alex was born.
Oh, you live in Eagle Rock, California?
Yeah.
She lives in my sister's old house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You've been there, Alan.
Okay.
Yeah. There's each of the units, there's 4 separate units, and the big house. Each of those units, I don't know, a lot of senior citizens lived here back before our grandparents bought it. And I don't know, it was built in 1928. So there's history here I don't know about. But in 3 of the units, people have experienced stuff that's completely unexplainable. And in the big house, I've experienced too many things. And, and I'm thinking, what's going on in my life that I'm experiencing this? I felt like an attack,
Mm-hmm.
And the weirdest thing is, I try not to talk about it in front of my daughter and all that because it scares her.
Sure.
But I was like telling my husband, I try not to believe in this stuff. I don't believe in it. And he's like, Chris, come on, it's happened to you. And I'm like, yeah, but it's coincidence, So for me, all of this is, I'm listening. I'm just
So
thinking realms, quantum. I mean, come on, So Hollywood and all this stuff that's been.
Right. Where do you think they're getting their information?
But how many of them are real believers, right?
It has nothing to do with being a believer.
They're just
Lucifer's not a believer. The Watchers weren't believers. They rebelled. The Nephilim aren't believers. You don't have to be a believer to be prophetic or to have information, cosmic information. See, that's Christianity again. That's what, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't the Bible say that God doesn't repent of his gifts? That the gifts go before the man? Hitler was one of the greatest greatest minds. Look what he pulled off, but he was evil. That doesn't mean he didn't have an apostolic gifting. He absolutely was an apostle. Do you see what I'm saying? Here, real quick about your habitation. Remember how I was saying demons need human hosts in order to feed? They also need habitation, and it could be buildings, it could be houses, it could be rooms. Jesus speaks of houses and rooms and stuff like that regarding demons. So they do need habitation. And then your family, they were all Catholics, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but my mom
Yeah.
wasn't a practicing. I mean,
But in the family line though, right?
Right.
So
Mhm.
I'm going to say there's some old world Italian Catholic stuff probably buried on the property.
this place was not in they purchased this in 71, and this was on farmland. Don't know when it was.
Oh, I thought you said your grandparents bought it. I'm sorry.
No, my grandparents did buy this property, but my
Oh, but
mom
not
moved into it.
that far
Yeah.
back?
No, 71.
Okay, so I'm thinking there's something there. So have you ever looked into the property, the history of the property, like deeds? And I mean, they keep a record of that.
I've only found the building permits. That's it. But
'Cause
from what my
sometimes-
mom said, they moved the house from the front of the property to the back. And when they did that, they added on a lot of stuff. My mom found like artist paint and stuff like that in the basement a long time ago, like theatrical paint and stuff like that.
I'm trying to find the connection to what I said. So if you know the history of the house, like for example, I was at a bed and breakfast once, and we discerned rape and all sorts of crazy stuff like that, massive abuse for children in this bed and breakfast. And then after talking to the owner, we found out that way back it was an orphanage. So there's your connection, your tie-in. That's what I'm trying to figure out, what the tie-in is to what I said. I'm obviously wrong about your family, but there's got to be there's a tie-in. There's a spiritual tie-in with the property, and I'm thinking there might be some old school stuff on the grounds. Eagle Rock, right? California, Eagle Rock, LA. What's some of the history from that?
It was on the entire region was owned by the Verdugo family as a ranch,
Mm-hmm.
up all the way down to Torrance. And we had native. It was wholly to Native Americans. This area, 'cause the Eagle Rock was actually.
Oh, well, there you go.
You had the
There's-
Spaniards that took over that area. Actually, the whole area of the Verdugo Hills, that's where he was real. Zorro lived. And so you had the Spaniards taking it away from the First Nation
indigenous.
people.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of murder and
Yeah.
unbelievable
So
stuff that went
So there's
on.
probably some First Nation stuff on the ground.
It's the weirdest thing is that, my husband's not experienced it. I've experienced it. My daughter experienced two things. My niece has experienced stuff. It's
Well,
quite
you need
Go
your
ahead.
house cleaned. You don't want to be experiencing that stuff.
No, because I used to experience night terrors in the apartment I used to live in. I mean, bad night terrors.
Okay, so then my next question is going to be: did you ever experience an incubus type stuff?
What is that?
Demonic sexuality stuff?
No.
Well, not that we have to talk about it publicly, but look into that, because a lot of night terrors are associated with that. Bruising on the thighs, waking up with bruising on the inner thighs, and things of that nature. It's one way. It's one of the ways they. Remember, I was talking about they're really about. You think guys are all about it? These guys, these things are actually more about it. They're all about the vagina, because it's a portal. It's not to sound weird or crude. We're all adults here. This is really, it's really a thing. And night terrors for women sometimes are connected with them being accosted in the night by demons sexually.
That's why God introduced circumcision to the Israelis. The whole issue with circumcision, why that you have to be circumcised, is he says, that's mine. It's not your choice. You don't get a choice with that. He goes, it's for blessing. And the the whole issue of circumcision, Moses, that's why his wife goes, what are you doing? Go circumcise your son. Because that opens him up to.
It's there's so many multi-dimensional things involved. They're all tied in. And
Mm.
you know, Christians can't teach this because they don't understand it.
Right.
See, in order for Christians to even get anywhere near teaching this stuff, they have to understand a lot of the things that are involved that they just don't even believe in. You see, so they can't teach on it. They can't even speak about it. Does that make sense?
You know, the Chuck Missler, he passed away. He was really, really big in a lot of the Calvary chapels, and he's still revered by a lot of them until he started talking about the gap theory, tohu vabohu, you know, the Hebrew word, and the fall before that, Sidonia. He was close friends with David Flynn. All these guys knew each other. And when he started talking about aliens, he goes, well, we know that they're watchers. We know that they're the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God. All of a sudden, they pushed him out. He didn't stop. He started going into other circles. That's why he ran with a lot of the prophetic guys just on his teaching level with eschatology and all that. But he didn't back down. The whole issue, you guys want to see something that'll get on YouTube, look up David Flynn and look at Sidonia. Yikes. You know the faces on Mars?
Mm-hmm.
People laugh it off.
Half human and half lion.
Yep.
See, you got to remember, right? I mean, you got to remember the way Israel's encampment was set up in the desert mimicked the constellation with the lion and the man and the bull, and it's also the four living creatures. There's and see, it's
Chrissy too. As far as the Hollywood and all that, you know what's so demonic about they've brought in so much compromise where people, they're not even moved by what they see on TV anymore. You know that. And even with the whole introduction of the superheroes, I like all those kind of movies, but all it is people getting ready for what's coming.
Yep.
Alan,
So,
you said it. What's coming is ancient.
Yep. I am waiting to see huge monolith spacecrafts hovering over every major city in the world. That's what I'm waiting for. And I believe next month the U.S. government is going to reveal some stuff we've all known for a long time that they've been denying for a long time.
June 1st.
That type of stuff.
Yeah, Fox.
I don't want to see any of this stuff. I don't want to see any of this stuff. I don't pray to see stuff. I don't want to see it. I tell you the truth. But you know, Alan, you've said so many times that people are going to have discernment. And I'll give you an example. And it was before I came to Christ. This was 25, 30 years ago. But I used to clean government quarters, the white glove kind of inspection kind. And I got this one set of quarters to clean, and I'd been there, and it was like the third day I was there, and I needed to get it cleaned that day. And I had sat down at the table there still, and I sat down there to rest. And then in came the inspector, and he sat down, and he just, you know, how you doing, that kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm almost done. You know, I have this and this and this. You know, I just thought he was inspecting early because they'll do that. Then it just hit me because I'd had this strange feeling in this house for like 3 days that I'd been there. And finally, I just looked at him and I said, you know, did something horrible happen in this house? And he said, well, what do you mean horrible? And I said, did somebody die here? He goes, yes, as a matter of fact, right where you're sitting. And I was like, you know, like he said that this, God love him, I mean, this man, this family, his, you know, back when we used to have the pop top cans for Coca-Colas and stuff, you had that pop top. They were kind of sharp. Dropped it into her soda and drank it, and it got lodged in her esophagus, and she died right where I was sitting. And it had
Right.
only happened like a couple of weeks before. So where I'm going with this illustration is that you were talking about with the other lady with the house, the property. There's generational stuff,
Mm.
and then there's sometimes just sudden stuff that is isolated. But I don't know. I don't want to know. I came out of a place where I don't want to go into that too much, but this discernment thing, you've got to know, like you were talking about, Alan. I mean, I'd like for you to explain more about discernment to people, because without it, you wouldn't know who you're talking to. You won't know if it's part this or part that. You won't know if you're in dangerous ground or you're not. And if you don't have the Holy Spirit, you're really done. I mean, you're just done. And I'll give one more example. Yesterday, because I don't go around healing, teaching and teaching and all that stuff. It's not my ministry, but I will someday probably. But I was yesterday, I went over to my son's house.
I like this.
We used to, I bought a ton of crystal one time out of Arkansas back in my days when I was not, I mean, literally a 1 ton pickup full of 1 tons of crystals.
Lord.
Oh my God. Anyway, that's still over there, along with a lot of other stuff. And I walked in there, and I've noticed it before, but yesterday I went over to turn the air conditioner off, take some care of stuff while he went to work. And I walked in, and there was the most horrific feeling in that house. And I almost backed up, and then I said, no. No. I mean, out loud. I was like, no. And I went on in there, and I said, and he's got 2 parrots, and I talked to the parrots, and I told them to behave themselves, and then I gave them a cheery hello and whatever, and I walked down the hallway, turned the AC up, came back, and walked through the living room, and I looked up, and then it